Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Hayes. I'm an account director here with Inoapps, and I'd like to welcome you all to the first in a series of webinars that Inoapps are hosting throughout the summer. In today's session, we're going to take you through some of the basics of Oracle licensing. I say basic, we will go into some detail on things like the trend to cloud computing and the impact that things like virtualization are also having. Now, we've chosen this topic today because our clients continue to ask us about it. It continues to be an important area for many of them. Just to put things into perspective a little, Oracle is now the world's largest enterprise software company. It's by far one of the most prolific technologies that you'll find in today's modern data center. Its database alone dominates the marketplace. They have nearly 50% market share and well over 300,000 customers worldwide and growing. However, its licensing policies and its contracts are amongst the most difficult to comprehend, manage and understand, and that produces complexity. And what we find is that if you don't have specialist knowledge, then customers can easily run into problems managing that complexity and can run into issues with being under-licensed and being non-compliant. And Oracle will adopt a very effective audit program in order to identify and fix what it perceives as non-compliance in its install base. And in fact, it was recently suggested that up to 50% of new database license sales for Oracle in the UK last year came as a direct result of audit activity by the vendor. So what that means is that each year potentially hundreds of companies are facing large financial penalties into the hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of pounds, which sometimes occur unintentionally and due to a lack of knowledge. So what we advocate here at Inoapps as an Oracle Platinum partner is that we recommend that users of Oracle technology should be proactive in managing their license estates to avoid the risk of financial disruption and disruption to everyday working that under-license can bring. And we'd recommend that you employ the services of licensing experts and that you do that as part of a wider software asset management program that should consider best practice initiatives across tools, processes and people. And we can help you with that. Because at Inoapps, our licensing experts continue to assist many hundreds of organizations to take control and have confidence in their Oracle license position so they can be proactive in the event of a vendor audit. We've got the knowledge to help you discover and measure what software has been deployed. We can help you to interpret a range of Oracle licensing policies in your individual contracts so that we're able to effectively continually document what your license position is. We also have extensive knowledge of the Oracle audit process, and when you bring all that together, it all contributes to being able to help our customers reduce the risk of non-compliance and optimize their Oracle license estates. So today's webinar, it's going to be an informative session. It's merely an introduction. We can't cover off everything here today, but we do hope to arm you with some basics and some valuable information that you can take back to your organizations. There will be the facility to ask questions throughout the webinar interface. Gives you the option to ask some questions, and we'd be happy to take some questions at the end if we've got time. We'll also be using all the usual social media channels to increase awareness of this topic and provide updates on Oracle licensing throughout the year. So I'd encourage you all to connect to us via LinkedIn and Twitter and the usual social network channels. So before I hand over to Ron, I should take this opportunity to quickly introduce you to Inoapps and who we are. So we formed 10 years ago. We were initially focused on the implementation of Oracle ERP, predominantly Oracle Financials and HR, and we did that into the oil and gas industry based out of Aberdeen, and in fact that's still where our head office is based. Since then we've grown and diversified into one of the largest, most successful Oracle partners across Europe now, and we're now able to deliver services and software across the whole Oracle stack. And we have successful referenceable projects across all kinds of implementations, upgrades and enhancements across that Oracle stack, particularly if we look at Oracle eBusiness Suite Release 11 and 12, Oracle Fusion Cloud, and also Oracle Technology and Business Intelligence. We tend to work with customers now from a broad range of industry sectors, which include energy, engineering, construction, financial services, local and central government. And interestingly, we've also got very aggressive growth plans. We're keen to double our turnover in the next few years to 50 million, and we're expanding the team to do that. And we need to expand the team to meet the needs of an increasingly diverse customer base, which has become more global. And to help us grow as an organisation, we've also implemented Oracle Cloud ERP in order to improve our own back office financial system. And as one of the first companies to implement that Oracle Cloud financial system, we've been able to have success then delivering it into a number of our clients, and are the first partner to do so. And as such, we were recently awarded with a prestigious Oracle Specialist Partner for Cloud Award 2015. So our relationship with Oracle is very strong. We understand the Oracle stack, and we've got the expertise and know-how to be able to deliver successful projects that in turn help us to drive our continued growth. So that's a quick introduction to Inoapps. It's a quick introduction to the webinar. I'd now like to pass over to my colleague Ron, who's one of our licensing gurus here, and he's been working in the Oracle economy for over 30 years, I think. So thanks very much, Ron.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everyone. My first slide really is reinforcing a point Nick made earlier that about the challenges you face as a customer with your licensing and the compliance of it. Oracle doesn't even make all of the necessary information about the licensing rules available to customers. Some of it is for partners only, and even then we have to hunt around for quite a lot of it, and it's broadly scattered around. Quite often it's obscurely written. It's maybe some of the stuff has existed for decades and been altered and played around with. It's easy to read the wording and actually draw the wrong conclusions from it, sadly. And it doesn't scream at you with the sort of contemporary industry practices necessarily. It's not couched in those terms, which makes, again, it very unhelpful when you're trying to look at how you need to deploy Oracle today. So you will tend to get to struggle to understand the whole picture. We said Oracle has the right to audit you, and in the very worst case scenario, non-compliance could be punished with full list price back payments for the period of non-compliance if Oracle can establish that. It's not always that bad, but that is the position you could be looking at. So what we're hoping to do today is to arm you with some of the information that you would need to avoid the most common mistakes, or find out that you perhaps already made them and you need to correct those, which is maybe easier to do than waiting for an audit. So I thought it's useful to just quickly look back at how we've evolved, and some of these things you may think are passé, but in fact may be quite relevant to licensing Oracle in a sensible way. I want to look at how people have deployed Oracle and keep in mind how that impacts the commercial side of it. So the term physically managed server was not something we ever thought of in the old days, but that was a bare metal machine with a single native OS running on it. Multiple CPUs gradually involved into these SMP architectures, but for a long time CPUs were single core, and now that's all changed, of course. And in those days you licensed the whole of the server. Then over time many types of computer evolved hardware petitioning regimes. This wasn't a very standardized thing, but Oracle has a view about what hardware petitioning means. And my interpretation of that is that I want to see some rigidly ring-fenced set of CPU resources that can be treated as if it was a real computer. So you've still got a native OS running on the box, but you've got this ability to control the resources that are allocated to, in CPU terms, to the Oracle product that you're talking about. So Oracle produces a list which it publishes of valid hardware petitioning techniques, and they make the rules. So there's no point in saying, well, we think this other thing here is hardware petitioning. You have to go with what Oracle says. But as we'll see, this is hardware petitioning is tremendously important because it does give you a lot of control over your licensing. More recently, of course, we've evolved into virtualized clusters. So here we have a hypervisor with multiple instances of OSs, possibly even varied types of OS, and typically with live migration, so the ability for these virtual machines to be capable of moving around the cluster. And all I say for now on that is it would be unwise to make the general assumption that a virtual machine is something you can license. It may be, but don't make that general assumption. And then, of course, now cloud is highly topical, and I've got a little section at the end where we look at that. It turns out really that it's not introducing anything new in terms of how we think about Oracle licensing. It's a new way of thinking about the abstraction of the services that you're managing or using, but in terms of how we can interpret Oracle licensing, cloud isn't tremendously meaningful. Now, this is probably one of the most important slides I'm going to show you today. Licensable environment is a term that I invented about 4 years ago, having spent years and years working with these rules and giving people advice, and gradually it began to kind of form in my mind that actually licensable environment is about how do I measure compliance? If I've got this product deployed in some infrastructure, how do I know what Oracle would think is the correct licensing? How would I be compliant? So we hark back to what we've just seen. The whole of a physically managed server in the good old-fashioned way, that's a licensable environment you can go for. You can go for an approved regime of hardware petitioning, and I'll just say that on x86 kit, which is extremely prevalent these days, there are really only two candidates. So one would be Oracle Virtual Machine for x86, but without live migration, crucially, and the other one would be without a hypervisor, but you could run Solaris x86 running natively with capped containers, that's a feature of Solaris that gives you a mechanism Oracle will treat as a hardware petition. And thirdly, the whole of a virtualized cluster. So there's the bad news. You deploy a small Oracle virtual machine somewhere in a big cluster, and Oracle wants you to come along and pay for all of that cluster, for every product, in fact, that runs in that cluster. So even that's crazy, because you might end up paying for WebLogic and Business Intelligence and the database. You're kind of overpaying because they're all in the same cluster, and they can't all use all of the facilities. And generally, all of those three approaches or ways of looking at licensing are considered equal in licensing. So an awful lot kind of rolls on from understanding that those things are really broadly equivalent. Just a footnote there with a double asterisk. There's a particular thing about VMware. Since the vCenter 5.1, which isn't particularly recent, but Oracle began to notice about 6 months ago that a single instance of vCenter can manage multiple VMware clusters. And what Oracle will say about that is that they'll allege that all of the clusters might be therefore valid targets for live migration, and they want you to license all of those clusters for all of the products that you're running. So that really is quite hard, and there's some scope for arguing if the storage isn't visible to certain clusters, you need to get Oracle to confirm in writing that your particular configuration escapes that. But in a way, you're better off not being in that kind of position at all. So please do bear in mind how important licensable environment and understanding that simple vision of what it is that will help you in understanding your environments. So most Oracle technology products offer you a choice of license metrics, which would be processor or named user plus. And virtualization and cloud haven't generated any new metrics, so let's make sure that you have a clear understanding of what processors and NUPs actually are. So I'll use the term NUP for named user plus just to save time. So a user, this is my simple definition, my interpretation of different scenarios that I've examined over the years. A user under this metric is a real individual who interacts with the license system. Now, so it doesn't matter whether the user has an identity in the database, whether they come through a middleware tier, which kind of has, supports thousands of users, but with just like 50 connections to the database. None of that architectural stuff matters. It's all the real individuals who are using a screen or whatever to interact with that database. It could be as removed as someone using an application that creates a message on a message hub. That message gets consumed by another application, which then updates, say, an Oracle database. Now, if there's a one-to-one cause and effect between those events, then Oracle will say that person that created the message is a user. If, however, you batch up all the messages from lots of people and then process them, you break that one-to-one cause and effect, and you can treat the batch as a single user, the batch mechanism. An automated device, by the way, obviously is also needs a NUP, but that would be something like a remote electric meter that just wakes up and sends a signal. It's not someone in a warehouse with a a handheld device because you've still got a real person involved. It's not about concurrency, so Oracle's not had a concurrent user metric since 2002. Some people still retain these concurrent device licenses or contracts, which are still valid and can be quite beneficial if you have a large potential user community but only a small number of concurrent ones. It's a very attractive measure, but Oracle took it away all that time ago. And there's no concept in here of job sharing. You know, that's why I use the term real individual. If some people are job sharing, someone does 3 days a week, someone else does 2 days a week, but that's 2 real people. Unless you've got a special, everything's negotiable with Oracle, I guess. If you draw up a special contract to take account of things, then all of these generic rules I'm going through are potentially altered. But I can only give you the straightforward approach. Despite it being called named user, you're not obliged to keep a register of names. It's accepted that staff will leave and join. Others join. But if audited, you have to be compliant in terms of the sum total of people using the system over some kind of observed period of time, whatever that, that's not set in stone either, but you don't have to keep a named list. Remember, if you've got multiple tiers of Oracle software, so middleware and database, you have to think about both of them individually, really, because you might have a database with 1,000 users, most of whom come in on the web, but maybe there's 100 Oracle Forms users. So for Oracle Forms, the named user plus quantity could be that 100 probably, but for the database it would be different, or you could use the processor metric. They don't have to match, by the way, in different product tiers. But don't get sort of totally hoodwinked into thinking about the database, because you need to think about all the moving parts of the architecture. Some people also think that using a web style architecture does not in itself invalidate the use of named user plus licenses. But for example, if it's anything that involves self-registration, so if I could walk into an internet cafe and register myself into a system, then named user plus wouldn't be valid. And the old OLSA, or the current master agreement document that you sign when you're buying licenses, does include tables of minima for various products, so it's worth just checking in there. So let's move on to processor metrics. So what you have to do is beware, because this is 2 entirely different concepts. And here's a simple rule: any product that has the phrase standard edition in the name, and so that would include standard edition 1 as well, whether it's database or any other WebLogic standard, etc. A processor counted as an occupied CPU socket with no regard to cores. So this is quite generous, really, because in today's dense, core-dense CPUs, we're not taking any account of that with standard edition products. We're just counting the occupied sockets in the machine. Of course, there's a rule that says standard edition can only be on a server whose maximum capacity is less than or equal to 4 sockets, and for SE1 it's less than or equal to 2 sockets. But you only pay for what's actually occupied. Now, otherwise, that is for every other product, a processor is defined as follows. You add up all the cores now in all the relevant sockets. Now, what that means is, going back to my licensable environment concept, so it might be a physically managed hardware partition or the whole of a cluster, virtual cluster. So you add up all the relevant cores, then you apply Oracle's designated multi-core factor for that type of chip. And as a little tip, all Intel and AMD x86 chips are 0.5. So here's an example: 2 quad-core Xeons, that's 8 cores. 8 times 0.5 is 4 processor licenses. So that would apply for standard edition. It would apply for, sorry, not for standard. It would apply for enterprise edition or most of the middleware products as well. Now, you also have to do that calculation for named user plus, because there's a mandated minimum for most products. In the case of the database enterprise edition, it's actually 25 per processor. Now that means per the result of that calculation. So for those 8 Xeon cores, 4 processor licenses, we now need to take 4 multiplied by the mandated minimum for 25, and that will say that you must license at least 100 NUPs in that licensable environment. If you had 170 people, then of course you'd go for the maximum of the 2, so you have to license the 170 people. But if you only had 60 real people, you still have to license 100 because that's the mandated minimum. Okay, and people don't realize some of the kind of nuances of processor metric and the impact of hardware configuration. I make this statement: there is no fixed price differential between SE and enterprise database, for example, which sounds kind of strangely shocking because you can go to the price book and say, well, there's the price of standard and there's the price of enterprise. But of course, the processor means different things. So here's a scenario where we've got a server with 2 sockets, that's the purple boxes, and dual cores, so they're quite old-fashioned. So for standard edition, we're talking about 2 sockets, as we've said. That's 22K roughly. Enterprise, we've got 4 cores times 0.5. That's 2 licensable cores. That's 60K. Now, if we upgrade that hardware, or we can't get the dual cores, in fact, and we put in quad cores, and goodness knows, now we're talking about even bigger numbers, obviously 6, 8, 12, 16 cores per processor. Just casually slipping in this change of hardware. So nothing at all if you've got standard edition, because we've still got 2 sockets. But enterprise, we've doubled the number of cores, so it should be no surprise that we've doubled the price. But you can see how, how sensitive to the cores enterprise edition is. And here's another of my bits of jargon I've invented, the magic combination. So in some cases, we don't need to think about the licensable environment that I invented earlier, and that would only be for products running named user plus metric, but where for those products where the mandated minimum is just given as an absolute number. So the obvious examples would be database standard and SE1, and the BI suites, SE1 and Enterprise Plus, because NUPs are inherently multi-server, so the licensed individuals can use that product, that specific product, on any number of servers. So you've got production covered, regardless of the design. You've got DR, you've got UAT, you've got development. As long as all the real people are licensed, then you're okay. And in fact, standard database, the minimum is just 5 across the whole organization, which is pretty meaningless. So really, that's why I call it a magic combination. We've kind of bypassed the worry about the impact of configuration. So in my timeline, we had physically managed servers. Now we brought up hardware petitioning. So there's the document mentioned there. That will tell you what Oracle considers hardware petitioning, and in some cases how to make sure that is observed and enforced. Now the benefits are clear enough. If we're only using part of a server to run a specific Oracle product, then clearly we can reduce the cost. So that's nice, because now the core density isn't a concern. We can use that hardware petition to ring fence what we need. Of course, we can release more later, but we're in control of it. If you've got multiple Oracle products deployed on the same server, so you've got some middleware in the database, if you're thinking of licensing at the physical level, then you're going to have to cover all of that infrastructure for both products, even though each of them cannot possibly take all of the resources. So by running each in an individual hardware petition, we can license fit for purpose for each element of the stack. And the other thing is, on a physically managed server, we can't have mixed metrics for the same product. So you can't mix, say, enterprise database, NUPs, and procs, but you have separate hardware petitions. So those are the benefits of hardware petitioning, but particularly controlling your cost is probably number one. Let's now look at virtualized server farms. So here I've assumed these are Intel x86 servers with each one's got 2 occupied sockets, then they've got quad cores. So we've got a total of 48 cores in the cluster. I've said that until you extend it. Bear in mind, one of the key problems with virtualized farms is you increase them in size over time, and even though you may not have increased the Oracle usage, you now owe Oracle some more money because of the size of the cluster that you've now increased. So do bear that in mind. Let's suppose, therefore, we want to run a 4-core virtual machine for Oracle Enterprise Database. And if we're running VMware on this cluster, how many processor licenses do you need? Well, you need 24, because Oracle won't recognize hardware petitioning with VMware. It says you have to license the whole cluster, and we've got, with 48 cores and times 0.5, we've got to license 24 processors, which is quite expensive. Now, what if we ran Oracle VM for x86? How many processor licenses are required? Well, it might still be 24, or it might be 2. So let's assume that live migration is turned on, which OVM can do, but then you would be back in the same place as VMware, other than the fact that obviously Oracle doesn't certify for VMware, but it does certify its own hypervisor with its products, and test it and so on. But license-wise, it's no different. So if you don't have live migration, then you could just petition the 4 cores with OVM, and then you just need 2 processor licenses. So as I said, petitioning is your friend in terms of controlling your costs. And then if we wanted, on the same farm, if we wanted to run standard edition with a 4-core virtual machine with VMware, how many named user licenses for a community of 17 people? Well, we just buy the 17. This is the magic combination. It covers any number of servers, so we're not even victimized if we increase the cluster, and there are no per server or per CPU minima mandated for that product. So that's a very appealing way of using standard edition to get around this problem. Now, thinking back to the licensable environment, and that might be a virtual cluster. So let's think about some of the applications people have. So you may have bought some ISV business applications that include Oracle Tech products, and you might have bought those on what are called ASFU licenses, application-specific full use. Now, those are sold to be used solely with the intellectual property of that specific solution that was registered with Oracle to be sold under this scheme. You might also have e-business suites, products from Oracle, and if you don't customize the applications there, you have what are called restricted use rights on products such as Enterprise Database and App Server, which are part of that application suite. So now 2 things. If you customize either of those beyond the permitted scope, and for its own applications, Oracle has a full document describing what customization, what the levels are. But if you customize, if you mess around with an ISV application, put new schemas in the database, etc., then you've really violated that agreement. So Oracle will say you need full use. But the other thing, linking back to my licensable environment concept, is if this is a whole virtual cluster and we put these systems in amongst other things using the Oracle technologies, then we've got an illegal mix, because we can't say that those ASFU licenses or restricted use licenses are restricted to the intellectual property, because they're living in an infrastructure set which is actually being used for where that same product is being used elsewhere. So, excuse me. And there's no way of delineating and separating the 2. So again, you'd have to migrate to full use. And then, of course, cloud. So the question is how is Oracle licensed in the cloud? And well, we have to reply to that. Which cloud? I just want to talk you through here a quick summary of the categories I can really think of and how you would look at those. Now, increasingly, of course, Oracle's offering its own cloud services. These don't involve licenses in the traditional sense. It's subscription-based, so you're paying for usage in a completely different way. Secondly, there's an official document from Oracle which is called Authorized Cloud Environments. That was originally written in support of running on Amazon Web Services, and now it's been extended to Microsoft Azure as well a couple of years ago. So now Amazon actually offers 2 approaches here. So you can do a subscription basis where you're paying Amazon for the infrastructure, and you also include a charge for Oracle usage as well. I guess Amazon's done an enormous deal with Oracle to do a kind of generic hosting deal there, even though that's not generally available anymore for other people. But you can it's called bring your own licensing to Amazon or Azure. And this document tells you how to kind of count the cores and so on and relate it to those environments. And there you are effectively buying those virtual machine capability without worrying about the size of the cluster. So that's one kind of way out of that virtual cluster difficulty of cost, is to, in these environments, it's constrained by the supplier of the cloud. Now, hosting providers, in fact, you see, if you look at the next 2, parts of the chart, we've got hosting providers and we've got managed service providers, and these are different concepts that we may not think they're different in general usage, but they are for Oracle. So hosting for Oracle is something very, very specific. The licenses are owned by the hoster, not by the client. And the generic hosting one was taken away because Oracle's into cloud for itself now. But proprietary hosting means the hoster can support multiple client organizations from that estate with one solution, and there is supposed to be some kind of intellectual property in the solution rather than just being Oracle technology, but that's not always rigidly enforced. And then what's called LASU, which is license assigned to a specific end user. That is just, I guess there's more discount there for the hoster, but it can only support one client organization. And to enforce that, the client's name goes into the contract, but they're not the owner of the licenses. The hoster is the owner. So what I would call managed service providers, or some people might think of it as hosting, is where the customer retains the license ownership. Now, the danger here is that, and I think if you were about to sign a contract with an MSP, you want to be very clear that the licensable environment that I've the choices you have there that I've described, that they are suitable for the license set that you're nominating to go into that environment. If the MSP is simply giving you access to an enormous VMware cluster, then you'd be liable for millions of pounds, and even more when they extend the cluster, even though you're using a tiny piece of it. So there needs to be a very clear control there of making sure that to be compliant, you still have to have a valid licensable environment. Then we've got on-premise, which is sort of private cloud. Well, clearly we're back to the hardware partitioning and virtualization principles. So, you know, everything I've said previously, architect carefully basing your plans on what I've said there. And finally, with hybrid, there's that really, I can't really think of any special considerations there in terms of licensing. There's each part of the hybrid environment. So you might have an Oracle Cloud service, you might have some on-premise or some with an MSP. Each one can be evaluated in its own right. It doesn't introduce new licensing concepts, although there'll be some architectural challenges about moving data between the different parts of the hybrid. So my conclusions for this session are, Oracle's position on licensing for virtualized and migratable environments is not necessarily very intuitive and not really documented, but it is what the auditors enforce. Today you've got this tremendous core density that was unthinkable just a few years ago, which so even just thinking about a physically managed server, which used to be the way of avoiding the virtualization issue for cost purposes, even that can look expensive because of the number of cores you have. So hardware partitioning is the one tool you have to chisel out exactly the right set of resources to match the intended use. And I'll remind you, on commodity hardware, the only hardware partitioning is Oracle VM for x86 without live migration, or you can run natively with Solaris x86 with containers. And so always keep my licensable environment slide in your mind, just those three basic choices of what environment you're trying to provide compliance for. And in the case of cloud requirements, you need to dig behind that to see which of these requirements kind of applies, and what virtualization and partitioning are still going to be there behind the scenes unless it's a subscription model. So that's my contribution complete. I'll hand back to Nick, please.
Thanks very much, Ron. So I hope everybody found today's content useful and informative. We've got some questions coming through which we're going to respond to via our social media channels. I think what we've done today is we've shown you that just a small error in judgment or the use of a certain feature within an Oracle database can lead to problems, and it can lead to expensive problems. So really we'd really encourage you that to think about getting in touch with Inoapps. If you're working on something right now for your company, or you're working on behalf of a customer, and you've got some questions about specific licensing situation, then I encourage you to get in contact with us with us right now. As I mentioned before, Inoapps has the ability not only to quickly discover and measure the software that's been deployed across an estate, and that can be an on-premise or off-premise cloud estate as well, but we've then got the ability to quickly interpret Oracle's licensing policies, individual contracts, and then help you to document and optimize your license position very quickly and effectively. So yes, I think that that concludes today's webinar. I'd like to thank you very much, Ron, for your input there. That's some great detail. And finally, just to let you know that the next Inoapps webinar will be held on the 22nd of July at 10 a.m. and that's going to take a look at Oracle Application Express and how we're using that to extend the life of organizations' legacy systems based on Oracle forms. So thank you very much, everybody. That's it.